Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to be honest with you. When I saw the stack of research for today, I uh I think I actually groaned out loud a little bit.
Tell me back.
We are looking at the PMBO Guide 7th edition and the standard for project management. And, my brain immediately went to checklists, Gantt charts, these huge, heavy binders,
Yeah.
and just a whole lot of really dry, administrative, busy work.
Oh, that's a totally fair
Yeah.
reaction. I mean, for a long, long time, that is exactly what the body of knowledge represented to people, a doorstop.
A doorstop, a
Giant book of rules that, people would just use to beat each other over the head with in conference rooms.
Exactly. Well, did you fill out Form 27B? No. Then
Right.
you weren't doing project management. But, and this is why we're here, I started reading the 7th edition, and it felt different. Different how?
I just didn't feel like an instruction manual for a robot. It felt almost philosophical.
You hit the nail right on the head. This isn't just an update where they, changed a few acronyms around. It is a hard pivot. It's a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift, that's a strong term.
It is. If you look at the history of project management, for decades, it was defined by process. It was all about compliance.
Compliance. Whew. That's a loaded word. It sounds like law enforcement or something.
It really felt like it sometimes. The old way of thinking was, input A plus tool B equals output C. If you followed all the steps, filled out the charter, updated the risk register, checked every single box,
And you were a good project manager.
you were a good project manager.
Yes.
Even if the project itself was a total disaster for the company.
Which is just wild when you say it out loud. You could have a successful project management performance on a project that delivered a product nobody actually wanted.
Precisely. You got a gold star for following the map, even if that map led you straight off a cliff.
Wow.
The 7th edition flips that entirely. So the mission of this deep dive, really, is to decode that shift. We're moving from a focus on deliverables and process to a focus on value and principles.
Okay, so we're moving from did you follow the rules to did you actually help the company?
Exactly. And that sounds so simple, but it changes absolutely everything about the job.
Okay, let's double click on that. Because value is one of those corporate buzzwords that gets thrown around so much it starts to lose all meaning.
It does.
But the text makes this very specific distinction that seems to be the foundation of this whole new philosophy. It's the difference between outcomes and outputs.
This is the critical concept. I mean, if you get this, you get the entire 7th edition.
But here's my problem. In, casual conversation, I use those words interchangeably. What was the output of the meeting? What was the outcome of the meeting? It feels like the same thing to me.
In conversation, sure, that's fine. But in this standard, the difference is the entire ball game. And output is the deliverable. It's the artifact, the widget,
A thing.
the software code, the bridge. Yes, the thing.
The physical or digital thing I can point to and say, I made that.
Correct. The widget is the output.
Yeah.
The outcome is what happens because that widget now exists. It's the change in behavior, it's the benefit, it's the value that's created.
Okay, give me a concrete example. Because right now that still feels a little academic.
Sure. Let's use the software example from the source material. Imagine you are running a project to update the internal sales software for your company. You work for 6 months, you write the code, you install it on everyone's laptop, you finished on time and under budget.
Okay. In the old world, I'm popping the champagne. I delivered the output. I'm a hero.
You delivered the output. But let's say the new interface is, I don't know, really confusing. The sales team, they hate it. It actually takes them longer to enter a sale than the old system did. Sales productivity drops by 10%.
Oof. Okay. So I succeeded at the output, but I failed miserably at the outcome.
Exactly. The outcome should have been something like faster sales processing or higher employee satisfaction. If you don't achieve that, the widget you build is worthless. The 7th edition is basically telling project managers, you don't get to just wash your hands of the result because you built the thing.
Wow.
You're responsible for the value, not just the construction.
That is actually kind of terrifying.
Why do you say that?
Because I can control the construction. I can control whether the code gets written. I can't necessarily control whether the sales team likes it. That involves human behavior and adoption and training. It just feels like the goalposts have been moved much, much further away.
They have. And that's why this whole deep dive is so important. We aren't just learning how to schedule tasks anymore. We're learning how to influence an entire ecosystem to create value.
An ecosystem.
The project manager is no longer just a builder. They are a value creator.
So if we're on the hook for value now, we really can't just look at our little project in a vacuum. The text introduces this concept of the system for value delivery. It sounds very grand, like something out of a sci-fi novel, the system.
It does, doesn't it? But it's actually a very practical recognition of reality. You don't just, pop up a project tent in the middle of nowhere. Your project lives inside an organization, which lives inside a market, which lives inside the world.
That's those nesting dolls.
Exactly. And to navigate this, we need to understand the hierarchy the guide lays out. So at the very top, you have senior leadership and strategy. This is where the organization decides what it wants to be. We want to be the leading provider of electric vehicles, something like that.
Okay, that's the big vision. How does that turn into actual work?
It flows down through portfolios and programs. Now, I often see people use these terms interchangeably too. What's your take? What's the difference between a portfolio and a program?
Honestly, I usually think of a portfolio as just like a folder of projects, and a program is a really, really big project.
That is the classic misconception, and it's a good one to clear up. Think of a portfolio as the value bucket. It's a collection of projects, programs, and even operations managed together to achieve that strategic objective. It's all about selection.
Selection.
Yeah. Which projects should we put in this bucket to get the best return on our investment?
So the portfolio manager is kind of like a stock market investor. They want a balanced mix of things to get the best overall return.
That's a perfect analogy. They might actually kill a good project simply because it doesn't fit the portfolio strategy anymore. It's not personal. It's about the bigger picture.
Okay.
Now, a program is different. A program is a group of related projects managed together to get benefits you wouldn't get if you managed them all separately. The classic example is the Apollo program.
Okay, break that down for me.
So you have the spacesuit project, you have the rocket booster project, the lunar lander project. If you manage the spacesuit project completely independently from the lunar lander project, what happens?
You might build a fantastic spacesuit that looks great but doesn't fit through the door of the lander.
Exactly. The program is the thing that ensures they fit together. It coordinates all those dependencies to make sure the ultimate outcome, landing on the moon, is achieved.
Got it. And then beneath that, you have the individual projects, these temporary endeavors to build the suit or the booster. And finally, operations.
Which is the day-to-day stuff. But here's the critical part, the 7th edition highlights. The information flow. In the old command and control days, information only flowed down. Strategy to portfolio to project. Do what you're told.
Yours is not to question why. Yours is just to do or die.
Right. But in a system for value delivery, the flow must go upstream too. Operations has to be able to talk to projects.
Like, hey, this spacesuit is really uncomfortable and the astronauts can't actually move their fingers to press the buttons.
Exactly that. That feedback from operations has to flow up to the project, which might then flow up to the portfolio, which might even force leadership to rethink the strategy. It is a living, breathing loop.
A feedback loop.
A feedback loop. And if you block that upstream flow, you end up building beautiful, elegant things that don't actually work in the real world.
It's interesting you mention the real world because the text also makes a really big deal about the internal versus the external environment. It feels like the new PMBOK is finally acknowledging that you can't just stare at your Gantt chart all day. You have to look out the window.
That is a great way to put it. The internal environment is all the stuff inside the office walls. Your process assets, governance, documentation, your data assets.
The culture, too, right?
All culture is a huge factor. Security, culture, infrastructure. If your internal culture is really risk-averse if people get fired for making honest mistakes, that is a massive environmental factor that constrains your project. You can't just ignore it.
And the external environment.
That's everything else. Marketplace conditions. Are your competitors suddenly dropping their prices?
Yeah.
Social and cultural influences, new regulatory environments, even the physical environment, weather, working conditions.
Seems so obvious, but I feel like in that checklist era, it was really easy to forget that a thunderstorm or a new law is actually part of the project system.
It was treated as an annoyance,
Yeah.
right? An inconvenience, rather than a fundamental component of the system you're operating in. The 7th edition says, no, this is the water you are swimming in. You have to understand the water.
Before we move on to the principles, I saw a note about product management. It seems like the line between a project manager and a product manager is getting a little blurry.
It is, yeah, and the guide really acknowledges that. We're seeing this shift where project management and product management are integrating more and more. A product has a life cycle, right? Introduction, growth, maturity, decline.
And a project can happen at any point in that life cycle.
Exactly. You might have a project to launch the product. That's introduction. 3 years later, you have a project to add a new feature. That's growth. 5 years after that, you might have a project to retire the product. That's decline. The project is just the mechanism you use to change the state of the product.
Okay, so that really sets the stage. We're in a system for value delivery. We're focused on outcomes, not just outputs. Now let's get into the real meat of the change, the shift from process to principles.
This is the core of the 7th edition. Instead of giving you a map that says, turn left at the big rock, then turn right at the tree, it gives you a compass. It gives you 12 principles to guide your behavior.
I love the compass analogy. Because if the terrain changes, like if the tree falls down, a map is suddenly useless. But a compass still points north.
Precisely. And these principles, they align really closely with the PMI code of ethics. Responsibility, respect, fairness, honesty. They're all about the mindset of a project professional.
Let's walk through these. I want to dive into some of the ones that really stood out to me as being different from the old school way of thinking. The very first one is stewardship.
Be a diligent, respectful, and caring steward.
I'll be honest, steward feels a bit medieval, like I'm taking care of a castle in Game of Thrones or something. Why this word instead of manager or leader?
It's a very, very deliberate choice. A manager controls resources. A steward protects and nurtures them. It implies a fiduciary relationship.
Fiduciary. Okay, that's a legal term, usually about money. Like a financial advisor has a fiduciary duty to act in my best interests, not their own.
Exactly. The principle says you have to act with integrity and trustworthiness. You're treating the organization's resources, its money, its people, its reputation, as carefully as you would your very own. But the 7th edition actually goes even further. It expands stewardship beyond just the company walls.
How so?
It talks about environmental and social stewardship.
So it's not just did I save the company money, but also did I pollute the river while I was doing it?
Yes. Imagine you're running a construction project. You could save $50,000 by dumping some waste illegally or maybe using substandard materials that might degrade in 10 years. A manager who's just focused on the budget output might do it. A steward would not.
Because a steward cares about the long-term impact on the world and the community, not just the immediate Gantt chart.
Correct. It elevates the role. You aren't just a taskmaster. You are, in a sense, the conscience of the project. You're the one holding the ethical line.
The next one is team. Specifically, create a collaborative project team environment. This seems like where the soft skills really come into play.
Oh, it is. And the key mechanism here is what they call the team agreement.
I've used these before. It's like setting up a set of ground rules, right?
It is, but it's so vital. You're establishing behavioral parameters early on. How do we handle conflict? How do we make decisions? But there's a technical nuance here I really want to highlight because it causes so many arguments in offices.
Oh.
It's the difference between authority, accountability, and responsibility.
Oh, yes. This is the classic who is to blame mix-up. Break it down for us.
Okay. So authority is the right to make a decision.
Right.
I have the authority to sign this check. Accountability is being answerable for the outcome. If this goes wrong, it is on me. And the text is really strict about this. Accountability cannot be shared.
Whoa. Really? I feel like in most meetings, everyone tries to share the accountability so no one person gets fired if things go south.
That is just human nature, but it's really bad management. The buck has to stop somewhere. You can share responsibility. That's the obligation to do the work. We can both be responsible for writing the report, but only one person can be accountable for ensuring the report is accurate and submitted on time.
That's a crucial distinction. If everyone is accountable, then nobody is accountable.
Exactly. And a good steward knows that and makes it clear from the start.
Principle number 3, stakeholders. Effectively engage with stakeholders. We talked about this in the intro, but the key word here is definitely engage.
Yes. In the past, we often talked about managing stakeholders, like they were obstacles to be controlled or managed. Engagement is totally different. It's about detecting, collecting, and evaluating information to create a shared understanding. You're not just broadcasting to them via email, you're actually listening.
Listening to understand, not just to reply.
Correct. You got it.
Number 4 is value. Focus on value. We touched on this with outcomes versus outputs, but the text mentions the business case.
The business case is your North Star. It's what defines the business need and the project justification. If at any point your project stops aligning with that business case, a principle-based project manager has to raise their hand and say, wait a minute, why are we still doing this?
Even if the schedule says keep working.
Especially then. If the market changes and the business case is no longer valid, Continuing the project is actually destroying value, not creating it. A steward stops the project.
Number 5, systems thinking. Recognize, evaluate, and respond to system interactions. This one sounds a bit like chaos theory.
It's about seeing the forest and the trees at the same time. It's realizing that if you cut the budget, which is one domain, you might destroy employee morale, which is another domain, which then slows down the schedule, which is a third domain.
So nothing is isolated, it's all connected.
Nothing. It is the butterfly effect. A seemingly small change in requirements can ripple through testing and documentation and user training. Systems thinking requires empathy and really the ability to challenge your own assumptions. You have to always be asking, if I pull this lever here, what breaks over there?
Let's jump to number 6, leadership. Demonstrate leadership behaviors. Now, wait a minute. Is this just for the project manager?
Absolutely not. And that is the crucial distinction the guide makes. Leadership is different from authority. Authority is given to you by your job title. Leadership is a behavior. The principle says anyone on the team can and absolutely should demonstrate leadership.
So the junior developer who speaks up about a potential safety risk is demonstrating leadership.
100%. Motivating, coaching, showing empathy, having self-awareness, those are all leadership traits that are available to everyone. The best PMs cultivate leaders on their team. They don't just give orders.
Number 7 is tailoring. Tailor based on context.
This is the perfect antidote to that robotic checklist problem we were mocking earlier. One size does not fit all.
The just enough concept.
Right. Use just enough process, just enough artifacts to get the job done. If you're building a doghouse in your backyard, you don't need the same blueprints and safety checks as if you're building a skyscraper.
Right.
If you apply skyscraper-level process to a doghouse project, you're just wasting value. You're failing the principle.
That makes so much sense. I think so many of us have been on doghouse projects that were managed like skyscrapers, and it's just miserable for everyone.
It creates bureaucracy, not value. It's a killer.
Okay, number 8, quality. Build quality into processes and deliverables.
And quality here isn't just it works. The text lists out all these dimensions: performance, conformity, reliability, resilience, satisfaction, efficiency, and even sustainability. It's really multidimensional.
Number 9, complexity. Navigate complexity.
This just acknowledges that projects are messy. Complexity comes from human behavior. People are unpredictable. It comes from system behavior. It comes from ambiguity. And you can't solve complexity like it's a math problem. You can only navigate it.
It's not a puzzle to be fixed. It's more like a sea to be sailed.
That's a poetic and very accurate way to put it. You have to constantly monitor the conditions and adjust your course.
Number 10, risk. Optimize risk responses. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Most people hear risk and they just think bad thing happening.
Right. But the standard defines risk as uncertainty that matters. And that includes threats, which are negative, but also opportunities, which are positive.
Wait, a risk can be a positive thing.
Absolutely. A risk could be, what if the price of our raw materials drops and we can save a ton of money? Or what if our main competitor's launch is delayed? You need to optimize your response to capture that opportunity just as much as you need to avoid the threat of your own delays.
And there's a nuance here about risk appetite.
Yes. How much uncertainty are you, as an organization, willing to stomach? A tech startup might have a really high risk appetite. They'll bet the farm on a new idea. A nuclear power plant has a very, very low risk appetite. You have to know what that threshold is.
11, adaptability and resiliency. Embrace them.
There's a slight difference. Adaptability is responding to changing conditions, like a willow tree bending in the wind. Resiliency is absorbing an impact and recovering quickly, like a sponge springing back to its original shape after you squeeze it. You need both to survive in a project.
And finally, number 12, change. Enable change to achieve the envisioned future state.
This one is huge. It distinguishes project change control, which is basically paperwork for changing scope, from change management, which is all about the people. You can build the best system in the world, but if the people refuse to change their behavior to actually use it, you have failed. This principle is about transitioning the culture and the people.
So those are the 12 principles, the mindset, the compass. If you have this compass, you can navigate any project, but we still have to do the actual work, right? We can't just sit around having a philosophical mindset all day.
We do. And that brings us to the action part of the guide, the 8 project performance domains.
Right. So if the principles are how we should behave, the domains are what we should focus on.
Correct. They're the broad areas of focus where that behavior gets demonstrated. And just like the systems thinking principle, these domains all interact and overlap. You don't do them in order, like a checklist. You're doing them all at once.
Let's run through them. Domain 1, stakeholders. We have the principle, so now what's the action?
The action is the engagement cycle. You identify, then you understand and analyze, then you prioritize, then you engage, and then you monitor. And it's a loop. It's not a one-and-done thing.
And the text breaks down communication types here. Push, pull, and interactive.
Right. Push is sending an email or a memo. Pull is putting a file on a shared server for them to go find. Interactive is a conversation, a meeting. The real insight here is that those soft skills, active listening, conflict management, they're actually critical technical skills in this domain. You can't code your way out of a stakeholder problem.
Domain 2, team. We talked about collaborative environments. What are the specifics here?
This domain really focuses on leadership styles and culture. It talks about centralized leadership, where the PM creates the plan, versus distributed leadership, which you see in self-organizing teams.
And servant leadership pops up here too.
Yes. The leader as a diversion shield. You're there to remove obstacles for your team. You're focusing on the growth of the team members. It also dives really deep into emotional intelligence, or EI.
Which feels like it's finally getting the respect it deserves in the business world.
It is so essential. The text discusses the 4 components. Self-awareness, which is knowing how you feel. Self-management, which is controlling your reaction to that feeling. Social awareness, which is empathy. And social skill, which is managing relationships.
So if I get angry in a meeting, that's self-awareness. If I stop myself from yelling, that's self-management.
Exactly. And if you notice that your team member is shutting down because they're stressed out, that is social awareness. If you can't manage your own emotions, you certainly can't lead a high-performing team. When we talk about amygdala hijacks, that's when your brain goes into fight or flight mode. A good PM has to be able to spot that in themselves and in others and de-escalate the situation.
Domain 3 is where I think a lot of people get confused, but the guide clears it up beautifully. Development approach and life cycle.
This is the real nuts and bolts of how we build the thing.
Yeah.
And it offers a spectrum of approaches.
Predictive versus adaptive. Let's define these really clearly for everyone.
Okay. Predictive is the traditional waterfall method. You plan everything up front. This is really useful when the scope is stable and you know the requirements. Like building a bridge. You don't want to iterate on a bridge design while you're pouring the concrete.
Right. Let's just build half the bridge and see if cars fall off is not a good strategy.
Yeah. A terrible strategy. So predictive is best for high-risk, fixed scope projects. Adaptive, on the other hand, is agile. This is useful when there's high uncertainty or the requirements are really volatile. You iterate. You learn as you go.
And hybrid is the mix of both.
Which is frankly where most modern projects actually live. And the guide gives this fantastic case study, the community center. This really crystallized the whole concept for me.
Oh, I loved this example because it shows how one project isn't just one thing. Walk us through it.
So imagine a project to build a new community center. It seems like one big project, right? But it actually has 3 distinct parts. Part 1 is the physical building itself. That is predictive.
Okay.
You need blueprints, you need permits, you need a fixed scope. You pour the foundation before you put up the roof. You need a schedule that says Tuesday, pour cement.
Right, standard construction. Makes sense.
Part 2 is the senior services program, like a Meals on Wheels service. They don't know exactly what the seniors in the community need yet. So that part is iterative. You start with one service, maybe lunch on Tuesdays. You run it for a bit, you learn, you get feedback, then you add a transportation service. Then you add a bingo night. You grow the program based on what you learn.
So you aren't trying to plan the bingo schedule a year in advance before you've even served a single meal.
Exactly. And then part 3 is the website for the community center. That part is adaptive. You launch a basic page. Users complain they can't find the phone number. You change the layout immediately that afternoon. Someone suggests a donation button. You add it the next day. It's constant, rapid change based on user behavior.
And all 3 of these, the predictive construction, the iterative services, the adaptive software, are all happening inside the same project.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is why the one-size-fits-all mentality just fails. A good project manager looks at the community center project and says, okay, I need a traditional construction manager for the building, and I need a scrum master for the website. And then they manage both of them under one single umbrella.
But how do you even report on that? I mean, the construction guy is reporting % complete, and the software guy is reporting story points burned. Those are different languages.
That is the challenge and the art of the hybrid PM. You have to be the translator. You have to synthesize those different languages into a single coherent picture of value for the stakeholders. That's why this job is hard.
That makes it crystal clear. Okay, domain 4 is planning.
Planning organizes and coordinates all the work. But the key variable here is how much planning you do and when. In a predictive project, you do a ton of planning up front. In an adaptive project, you use what's called rolling wave planning.
Rolling wave.
Yeah. Imagine you're standing on a beach. You can see the wave that's right in front of you very, very clearly. You can also see the waves that are further out, but they're kind of blurry. So you plan the next 2 weeks in high detail. That's the near wave. And you plan the next 6 months in broad strokes. That's the far wave. As time passes, the far waves get closer and clearer, and you plan them in detail then.
That saves you from wasting time planning things that are just going to change anyway.
Exactly. You're avoiding waste.
Domain 5, project work.
This is the engine room. It's about establishing processes, managing physical resources, and, importantly, fostering a learning environment. The guide makes a great distinction between explicit knowledge stuff that's written down in manuals and documents and tacit knowledge.
Tacit knowledge, that's the gut feeling or the tribal knowledge, right?
Right. It's the senior engineer who knows that if you just wiggle this one particular wire, the whole thing works. A good PM creates an environment where that tacit knowledge is shared, maybe through pair programming or mentorship or job shadowing, so it doesn't just walk out the door when that engineer retires.
Domain 6, delivery.
This is about delivering the scope and quality that the project was undertaken to produce. There's a great concept here called the cost of change curve.
Oh, I know this one. It's so much cheaper to fix a mistake early on.
Much, much cheaper. If you find a defect in the requirements phase, say a typo in a document, it costs pennies to fix. You just hit the delete key. If you find that same defect after the product has been built, shipped, and is already installed in the customer's home.
It costs millions, recalls, lawsuits, brand damage. It's a disaster.
Exactly. So this domain focuses on what we call moving quality to the left, finding and fixing things as early as possible in the timeline.
Domain 7, measurement.
Metrics.KPIs. But it makes a really important distinction between leading indicators and lagging indicators.
What's the difference?
A lagging indicator reports on what has already happened. We spent $50,000 last month. We fixed 10 bugs last week. It's history. You can't change it. It's like trying to drive by only looking in the rearview mirror.
Okay. And a leading indicator.
A leading indicator predicts future performance. The size of our project backlog is growing faster than our team can clear it. That predicts a future schedule delay. Our team morale survey scores are dropping. That predicts future employee turnover. A good PM needs leading indicators to steer the ship before they hit the iceberg.
And finally, domain 8, uncertainty.
This really wraps up the risk principle we talked about. It distinguishes general uncertainty from ambiguity, complexity, and volatility. Ambiguity means, I don't understand the situation, so the answer is to gather more information. Complexity means there are too many interconnected moving parts, so you need to simulate or segment the problem. And volatility means things are changing really fast, so you need to build in resilience and slack. You handle each one differently.
So those are the 8 domains: stakeholders, team, development approach, planning, work, delivery, measurement, and uncertainty. It feels very comprehensive.
It's an integrated system. And the job of the PM is to juggle all 8 of those balls at the same time.
Now, we touched on this in the principles, but there's a whole section 4, that's just dedicated to tailoring. Why devote a whole section to this?
Because it is probably the most common failure point. Organizations go out and they buy a methodology off the shelf or a big, expensive software suite, and they force every single person to use it exactly the same way for every single project. The guide is screaming, stop that. Every project is unique.
What's the goal of tailoring them?
The goal is to maximize value and manage constraints. The process they lay out is, first, select your initial approach, then tailor it for the organization's governance rules, then tailor it again for the specifics of your project.
So let's play this out. I have a team of 3 people, and we're building a small marketing website. How do I tailor?
You strip it way down. You probably don't need a formal 20-page risk register document. A conversation in your morning stand-up meeting is enough. You don't need a formal steering committee. You need speed and flexibility.
Okay. Now imagine I have a team of 500 people building a new nuclear power plant.
Now, you absolutely need that formal risk register. You need the steering committee. You need a rigid change control board. You tailor up to match the complexity and the risk. The mistake that so many companies make is applying the nuclear plant process to the marketing website project.
And to help with all this, the new guide gives us a toolbox. It calls it Models, Methods, and Artifacts.
This is a huge change from the old editions. The old PMBOK would say, use this specific formula to calculate this thing. This edition says, here's a library of tools. Pick the one that works for your situation.
Yeah, it lists models like situational leadership or 80-CAR for change management.
Right. And notice, it doesn't tell you that you must use 80K. It says 80K is a model that exists. If you have a project with a heavy change management component, you might want to look at it. It treats the project manager like an intelligent professional who can choose their own tools.
And methods like estimation or data gathering, and artifacts like logs, plans, hierarchy charts.
It's basically acknowledging that the body of knowledge is now too big for any one person to memorize. You just need to know what's in the toolbox so you can pull out the right tool at the right time. You don't use a hammer to turn a screw.
So bringing this all together, we have shifted from doing the project right, which means following the process, to doing the right project, which means delivering value.
That's the headline. That's the whole story. We have moved from a process-based standard to a principle-based standard. We've finally acknowledged that technical skills are just table stakes. You need leadership and emotional intelligence and business acumen to survive and thrive.
It really feels like the profession is growing up. It's moving from being a trade to being a true profession.
I completely agree. It demands more of the project manager. You can't just hide behind a checklist anymore. You have to think. You have to be a steward. You have to own the outcome.
Before we sign off, I want to leave the listener with one final thought from the materials. We've talked about the book, but the guide mentions this thing called PMI Standards Plus.
Yes. This is the realization that a physical book is static. As soon as you print it, it's already out of date. PMI Standards Plus is the digital platform. It's dynamic, it evolves. The idea is that the body of knowledge isn't just in the book anymore. It lives online and changes and grows with the industry.
So for everyone listening, look at your current project. Ask yourself the hard question. Are you focused on the deliverable, the output? Are you just trying to get the widget out the door? Or are you truly focused on the value, the outcome? Are you building the software, or are you improving productivity? That is the fundamental question the 7th edition demands you ask.
And if you can answer that question, and if you can embrace the mindset of a steward, you're well on your way to navigating this new landscape.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.